Orange flames licked the night sky as the great Longhouse burned, its ancient timbers groaning beneath winter's bitter wind. Through the swirling snow, a lone figure moved with desperate purpose. Astrid, 9 months heavy with child, her warriors. Swords strapped awkwardly across her swollen belly. Behind her, torches bobbed in the darkness like angry spirits, the hunting horns of her own clan echoing across the fjord. She had refused to bind her blood to their enemy chieftain, choosing, instead, a path that would brand her forever traitor. Now as she pushed through deep drifts toward the forbidden troll forest, ancient stone guardians watched from the mist. Among those whispering pines lay either salvation or doom. But could she trust the forest's outcast spirits, or would they prove more dangerous than the kin who sought her blood? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. 3 moons earlier, Astrid had stood before her father in the great hall, her fingers tracing the intricate knotwork of his sword hilt, a nervous habit from childhood. Firelight danced across the weathered faces of the clan council, their silence heavy with expectation. Her father, Chieftain Harold Greybeard, held out the silver arm ring that would seal her fate. "The Blackfjord clan offers peace through your marriage to Chieftain Bjorn," he declared, his voice echoing against smoke-stained beams. "Their raids have bled us for 3 generations. With this union, we end the feud." Astrid's hand dropped from the sword hilt to rest protectively over her belly, where her secret grew. She kept her face carefully blank, though her heart thundered like a war drum. Bjorn Blackfjord, a man twice her age, whose reputation for cruelty had spread even beyond the northern settlements. "You've trained with sword and shield since you could walk," her father continued, mistaking her silence for mere reluctance. "Now, serve your clan with a different kind of strength." But he didn't know about the nights spent in the forest's edge, with Eric, the wandering scold whose songs had captured her heart. Eric, whose gentle hands crafted stories in the air and whose quiet wisdom belied his common birth. Eric, who even now waited in their secret meeting place, unaware that their love had borne fruit. "Father," she began, choosing her words with the same care she'd used selecting arrows before a hunt. "The Blackfjord clan's peace offers are as trustworthy as spring ice. Their raids may pause, but only until they've claimed both our bloodlines." A murmur rippled through the council. Her father's eyes narrowed. "You speak of things beyond your knowledge, daughter. The decision is made." That night, as Astrid slipped through the shadows to meet Eric, she clutched her father's sword. Not stolen, she told herself, but claimed by right of blood. The weapon had been promised to her since childhood, before political expedience had transformed her from shield maiden to bargaining chip. She found Eric by their standing stone, his reed pipes tucked into his belt, face troubled in the moonlight. "They've announced the marriage," she said without preamble, "to Bjorn Blackfjord." Eric's hands, so sure when shaping tales or drawing. Music from wood and wind trembled as they reached for her. "Then we must act quickly. I've gathered supplies, coin enough to—" "I carry your child." The words fell between them like stones into still water. Eric's face transformed, joy and terror warring across his features. "How long?" 3 moons, perhaps 4. Astrid's hand tightened on her father's sword. "If we flee now, before the marriage contracts are sealed." "Bjorn will hunt us," Eric warned, though she saw the hope kindling in his eyes. "Your father too. Then we'll find sanctuary where they dare not follow." Astrid's gaze turned toward the dark line of the troll. Forest, where ancient powers still held sway. The old stories speak of outcasts who found refuge among the stone watchers. Eric's knowledge of legend and lore showed in his furrowed brow. "The forest exacts its price from those who seek its protection. Are you certain?" Instead of answering, Astrid pressed her father's sword into Eric's hands. "Sell this in the southern markets. It will buy us passage and supplies." She touched the blade one last time, bidding farewell to her childhood dreams of wielding it in her clan's defense. "Meet me at the forest edge in 5 days' time." But the gods, it seemed, had other plans. The very next evening, as Astrid prepared her own escape, a servant girl noticed her morning sickness. By nightfall, the whispers had reached her father's ears. The great hall erupted in chaos as Harold Greybeard confronted his daughter, his rage made worse by the discovery of her missing sword. "A common scald," he roared. "You betray your clan, your duty, your very blood, for a wandering singer of songs." The council members watched with hard eyes as Astrid stood her ground. "I betray nothing," she declared. "The betrayal is forcing me to bind our clan to murderers and oath-breakers." "Seize her," Harold commanded. "Lock her in the high chamber until the Black Fjord delegation arrives. Bjorn will decide her fate and her bastards." But they had underestimated her. That night, as guards dozed outside her door, Astrid used her battle training for a different kind of fight. A rope braided from torn blankets, a careful climb down the outer wall, a swift dash to the stables. By the time the alarm horn sounded, she had already slipped away into the darkness. She rode hard through the night, but her pregnancy slowed her more than expected. Near dawn, she heard pursuit closing in. With no choice left, she turned her horse toward the settlement's edge, where the peat fires smoldered. In one desperate gambit, she scattered the embers against the Longhouse walls. Let them choose, she thought grimly, between pursuit and saving their home. The dry winter wood caught quickly, and in the chaos of the spreading fire, Astrid vanished into the snow-laden forest. She carried only her mother's healing pouch, a small knife, and the desperate hope that Eric would understand why she couldn't wait for their planned meeting. The babe kicked within her as she fled, strong and insistent. She whispered a prayer to the old gods, to the stone watchers of the forest, to any power that might grant her child a future beyond blood feuds and forced marriages. Behind her the horns began to sound. Dawn painted the sky in shades of iron. As Astrid stumbled through deep snow, one hand pressed against a broad pine for balance, the other clutching her mother's healing pouch. The familiar weight of the leather bag against her hip offered small comfort. Dried herbs, binding cloths, and rune stones collected over generations of midwifery. Her mother had pressed it into her hands on her 16th naming day, never suspecting. It would one day serve her daughter's flight. The babe shifted restlessly within her, and Astrid paused to catch her breath. The sharp tang of smoke still clung to her clothes, mixing with the crisp winter air. She fumbled with numb fingers at the pouch's strings, retrieving a sprig of dried mint to chew against the morning sickness that plagued her even now. "Forgive me, little one," she whispered, rubbing her swollen belly. "We'll rest soon enough." A horn's deep bellow shattered the morning stillness. Closer now, much closer than she'd hoped. Her pursuers had not been as distracted by the burning Longhouse as she'd prayed. Astrid forced herself forward, scanning the terrain with a warrior's eye. The fresh snow would make tracking her painfully easy, but it also revealed the hidden dips and deadfalls that could snap a horse's leg. She angled northeast, toward where the ground grew treacherous with half-frozen marshland. It was a gamble. She'd need to skirt the marsh's edge carefully, but mounted pursuers would be forced to circle far around if she could maintain her lead until nightfall. A branch cracked behind her. Astrid spun, her hand reaching instinctively for a sword that wasn't there. Through the trees, she glimpsed movement, a flash of steel, the flutter of a clan banner. Her father's hunters had split up, some on horseback following her main trail, others on foot cutting through the forest's heart. She retreated slowly, keeping the thick trunk of an ancient pine between herself and her pursuers. The healing pouch bumped against her hip, and she was struck by a desperate idea. Quickly, she pulled out her mother's runestones, scattering them in the snow. Let them waste precious time deciphering signs and portents while she escaped. "The tracks lead this way," a familiar voice called. Ragnvald, her father's master. Huntsman, the man who had taught her to track deer through the deepest snows. "She's tiring. See how the steps drag?" Astrid's legs burned as she pushed herself into a stumbling run. She had trained all her life as a warrior, but pregnancy had changed her body in ways no battle drill could prepare for. Her center of balance was wrong, her movements awkward and heavy. The babe kicked again, stronger this time. The pain doubled her over, forcing her to one knee in the snow. Not labor, not yet. It was too soon. But her body was protesting the punishment she forced upon it. From her mother's pouch, she pulled a small clay jar of willow bark paste. The bitter medicine would help with the pain, but it would also thin her blood. Dangerous if she took a wound. Another choice between bad options as she swallowed. The paste. Voices drifted through the trees. "Harold wants her alive," someone said. "Her and the babe both. And the scald? Dead on sight. He'll pay for bewitching her with his songs." Astrid's heart clenched. Eric would be waiting at their meeting place, exposed and vulnerable. She had to find some way to warn him, but how? She couldn't risk doubling back, not in her condition. A raven's harsh call split the air. Astrid looked up to see the black bird watching her from a snow-laden branch. In the old tales, ravens were messengers of the gods. Her mother had taught her their language, passed down through generations of wise women. From the healing pouch, she drew out a small knife and one of her braids. The raven's eyes gleamed as she cut the hair free, weaving it quickly with red thread from her mother's sewing kit. A crude message, but Eric would understand its meaning. Danger, flee, seek the forest's heart. She whistled the three-note call. Her mother had taught her, holding up the woven braid. The raven cocked its head, considering. Then, with a flutter of wings, it snatched the offering and wheeled away toward the south. Whether the bird would find Eric, whether he would understand. The warning, these were questions she had no time to dwell on. Already the voices were closer, and her brief rest had allowed the winter cold to settle deep in her bones. Astrid forced herself back to her feet, checking her bearings against the weak winter sun. The marshlands lay less than a league ahead. If she could reach them by midday, use them to shake her pursuers. A horn blast from the east was answered by another from the west. They were trying to herd her, she realized. Drive her south, away from the marshal, and back toward the settlements. Back toward Harold's justice and Bjorn's cruel mercy. Instead, she turned north. The gradient steepened, each step becoming a battle against both the terrain and her own exhaustion. The healing pouch bumped against her side in rhythm with her. Labored steps, her mother's knowledge her only remaining weapon. Let them think her addled by pregnancy, fleeing without purpose. Let them underestimate her one last time. Because, with each step north, each painful breath of frozen air, she drew closer to the one place they wouldn't dare follow. The troll forest waited ahead, its ancient pines reaching toward a steel-grey sky. Even at this distance, she could see the first of the stone watchers, weathered megaliths that marked the boundary between the world of men and older, stranger realms. Behind her, the horns called again, and Astrid smiled grimly. Let them come. Soon she would reach the forest's edge, where different laws held sway, and where a warrior's steel meant less than a mother's craft and courage. The broken shield lay half buried in snow at the edge of an ancient battlefield, its oak planks weathered, but still solid. Astrid scraped away ice with numbed fingers, revealing faded paint, a bear rampant against a blood-red field. No clan she recognized, though that meant little. These highlands had seen countless skirmishes over generations, their only witnesses the silent stone watchers that dotted the ridgelines. She worked the shield free as the wind howled across the exposed hillside. The leather grip had long since rotted away, but the shield's curve would serve well enough as a sledge to ease her passage through deeper drifts. More importantly, it could become trade goods later. Good oak was precious in these northern reaches. A sharp pain lanced through her belly, and Astrid braced herself against the shield's rim, breathing slowly as her mother had taught her. The babe was restless today, perhaps sensing her fear. She had lost her pursuers temporarily in the pre-dawn darkness, but the reprieve wouldn't last. "Be still, little warrior," she murmured. "We have far yet to go." The battlefield stretched. Before her, like a frozen sea, white drifts broken by the occasional dark shape of ancient warfare. A spearhead here, a rusted helmet there. The old stories said battles of such scale drew the attention of the gods, thinning the boundaries between worlds. Looking at the eerie stillness of the place, Astrid could believe it. She used the shield to slide down the hillside, saving her strength where she could. The wood groaned beneath her weight but held. At the bottom of the slope, she found herself in what must have been the heart of the fighting. Here, the snow-covered ground swelled in regular humps, burial mounds long since plundered by wolves and graver robbers. The wind changed direction, bringing with it the distant sound of horns. They had picked up her trail again. Astrid turned to go, but something caught her eye, a glint of metal among the bones of the dead. She hesitated. Every moment spent not moving was a moment her hunters gained ground, but the glint resolved itself into a silver arm ring, half buried in frozen earth. Not just any arm ring, but one marked with the spiral patterns of a vulva, a wise woman, a seer. Astrid's fingers trembled as she lifted it free. Her mother had worn one much like it before Harold had forbidden the old ways in favor of the southern priests. A raven's cry split the air. Astrid looked up to see 3 of the black birds circling overhead. One dropped something that landed. At her feet, a scrap of red cloth. Her heart clenched. The warning to Eric had been received then, but had he heeded it in time? She slipped the vulva's ring onto her arm, beneath her sleeve. Perhaps it was only silver, worth a few days' food and shelter. Or perhaps, as the old stories claimed, such tokens carried other powers. Either way, she couldn't leave it for the grave robbers. The shield proved its worth over the next few hours as Astrid navigated the treacherous terrain. Twice she spotted search parties in the distance, their torches bobbing like fallen stars across the white landscape. Each time, she found herself guided to natural hiding places, a hollow beneath a fallen tree, a shallow cave in a rock face. Once she could have sworn the snow itself shifted to obscure her tracks. As the short winter day waned, she came upon more signs of ancient conflicts. Weathered stone cairns lined the path, marked with runes so old even her mother might have struggled to read them. The air felt different here, heavier, charged with something that made the hair on her neck rise. She was preparing to make camp in the lee of a large cairn when voices drifted up from below. Astrid pressed herself flat against the cold stone, hardly daring to breathe. "Tracks end here," Ragnvald was saying, as if she vanished into thin air. "Or as if something else took her," another voice replied. "We're too close to the forests. It bounds. There are powers here older than our oaths, Ragnvald. Superstitious nonsense. The girl is clever, but she's also heavy with child and half-frozen. She can't have gone far." Astrid closed her eyes, willing herself to stillness. The vulva's ring seemed to pulse against her skin, and for a moment she thought she heard singing. A woman's voice, deep and ancient, chanting in a language she almost understood. When she opened her eyes again, thick fog had rolled in from nowhere, blanketing the battlefield in white silence. The voices below grew confused, then alarmed. "Pull back," Ragnvald commanded. "We'll lose ourselves in this devil's breath." Astrid waited until their footsteps faded before moving. The fog cleared a path before her, as if drawn aside by an unseen hand. The shield scraped softly against stone as she followed this mysterious road, her way lit by an odd silvery glow that seemed to emanate from the vulva's ring. She found herself thinking of her mother's stories, tales of those who walked between worlds, guided by powers that remembered when all the lands were wild. Such help always came with a price, the stories warned. But what choice did she have? The babe kicked again, more gently this time. Astrid touched her belly, wondering what changes were being worked upon them both. Already she could feel something different in the child's movements, a rhythm like distant drums, like ancient songs. Ahead, barely visible through the fog, stood a line of stone watchers taller than any she had yet seen, the boundary markers of the troll forest proper. Beyond them lay her only hope of sanctuary, and whatever price such sanctuary might demand. Behind her, faint but growing closer, came the sound of horns. The stone rune emerged from the fog like a ship breaking through sea mist, a massive slab of granite twice Astrid's height, its surface carved with symbols that seemed to shift and change when viewed directly. She stumbled toward it, drawn by an awareness that felt older than thought. The vulva's ring burned cold against her arm, responding to whatever power lay encoded in those ancient markings. Snow had drifted against the stone's base, but one series of runes remained clearly visible. Astrid traced them with trembling fingers, remembering her mother's lessons in the old tongue. Safe passage, she translated haltingly, through Shadow's heart. The final symbol gave her pause. It looked like the rune for price, but subtly wrong, as if drawn by a hand that had never known human writing. The babe stirred restlessly, and Astrid felt a strange resonance between her child's movements and the pulsing energy of the stone. "What are you?" she whispered, though whether to the runestone or her unborn child, she wasn't sure. "Both question and answer walk the same path," a voice replied. Or perhaps it was the wind, or her own thoughts given strange form by exhaustion. The fog thickened around her, taking on shapes that might have been faces, might have been memories. She saw her mother standing before the hearth, teaching her the secret languages of herbs and healing. Saw Eric beneath their meeting stone, his hands weaving stories in the air. Saw her father in the great hall, his face twisted with rage at her betrayal. The images swirled together like snow in a storm. "Choose the voice that wasn't a voice," commanded. "The path of iron," an image of herself leading warriors, her father's sword bright in her hand. Or the path of stone, a different version of herself wrapped in mist, walking among ancient powers, with a child of two worlds in her arms. The vulva's ring constricted suddenly, painfully tight. Astrid gritted her teeth against a cry. This was a test, she realized, like the trials she had faced to earn her place among the shield maidens, but deeper, older. "I choose my child's path," she answered, "whatever it may be." The pressure of the ring eased. Around her the fog drew back slightly, revealing more runestones arranged in a vast circle. Each bore different markings, but they all seemed to point toward a gap in their formation, a pathway leading north. Astrid took a step toward the opening, then froze at a sound behind her. Torchlight flickered in the distance, accompanied by the crunch of boots on snow. Her pursuers had not been fooled by the fog for long. "She passed this way," Ragnvald's voice carried clearly through the still air. "The child's magic leaves traces even a blind man could follow." The child's magic? Astrid's hand went to her belly, remembering the strange resonance between the babe's movements and the runestone's power. Was that why they pursued her so relentlessly? Not just for the shame of her defiance, but for whatever power grew within her. The vulva's ring pulsed once, and the fog began to thin. Soon it would offer no protection. Astrid forced her exhausted body into motion, following the path indicated by the stones. Each step felt like wading through deep water, as if the very air had thickness and weight. The runestones watched her passage like silent guardians. As she passed each one, she felt its awareness brush against her mind. Ancient, alien, yet not entirely unkind. They were evaluating her, she realized, measuring her worth against some standard she couldn't begin to understand. Her foot caught on a hidden root and she stumbled, catching herself against one of the stones. Where her hand touched the granite, visions flashed through her mind. A woman in vulva's robes dancing among standing stones, a child with stars in its eyes and frost in its hair, a forest where the trees moved of their own accord, where trolls walked in daylight and magic ran like water. The babe kicked hard enough to draw a gasp of pain. The visions shattered, leaving Astrid dazed and shaking. She pushed away from the stone, but its images lingered in her mind. That child she had seen, had it been her own? Was this a glimpse of what waited if she chose the path of stone? A horn blast shattered the silence, much closer now. Astrid forced herself forward, though her legs trembled with exhaustion. The ring guided her, growing warm when she moved in the right direction, cold when she strayed. The runestones continued their silent observation of her passage. Through gaps in the fog, she caught glimpses of the terrain ahead. The regular circle of stones gave way to chaos. Great boulders strewn about as if by giants at play, their surfaces marked with runes that glowed faintly in the gathering dark. The air hummed with power, making her teeth ache and the babe dance within her. The boundary approaches. That strange voice that wasn't a voice whispered. Last chance to turn back, last chance to choose iron over stone. Astrid thought of her father's sword, now lost with Eric. Thought of the life she had trained for, the warrior's path she had expected to walk. But then she felt her child move again, felt the way it responded to the magic all around them, and knew there was no choice at all. Forward, she said firmly, whatever the price. The fog parted like a curtain, revealing a sight that stole what little breath remained in her lungs. Before her stood the true border of the troll forest, a wall of ancient pines whose branches wove together so tightly they blocked all sight of what lay beyond. At its foot, a final rune stone waited, larger than all the others. This one she could read clearly, though its message made her shiver. What passes may never return unchanged. Behind her, through the thinning fog, came the sound of running. Feet. The old man appeared between one heartbeat and the next, emerging from the shadows beneath the ancient pines as if born from them. His grey cloak seemed woven from mist itself, and in his gnarled hands he gripped a staff of twisted yew, its surface carved with spiraling runes that matched those on the boundary stone. 3 steps more, he said, his voice like stones grinding together, and you cross into realms where your clan's laws hold no power. He tilted his head, regarding her with eyes that reflected starlight, though the sky above was heavy with storm. Clouds. But other laws rule here, older and less forgiving. Astrid's hand went instinctively to her belly as another contraction rippled through her. The vulva's ring burned against her skin, responding to the stranger's presence. Behind her, the sounds of pursuit grew closer, shouted commands, the clash of weapons against shields. I seek sanctuary, she managed through gritted teeth. For myself and my child. Many seek, the stranger replied. Few are worthy. He extended the staff toward her. Take it if you dare. The wanderer's staff knows truth from lie, courage from desperation. Astrid hesitated only a moment before grasping the offered staff. Power surged through her arm, ancient and wild. Visions flashed behind her eyes, not glimpses of possible futures this time, but moments from her own past. Herself at 6, watching her mother tend the sick, learning the healing ways that Harold would later forbid. At 12, earning her place among the shield maidens, her father's pride still untainted by political ambition. At 16, meeting Eric for the first time, his songs awakening something in her that had nothing to do with magic and everything to do with choice. And finally, the moment she had felt her child quicken within her, knowing in that instant that every path before her had changed. Interesting, the stranger mused. Your blood carries echoes of the old powers, your mother's legacy, no doubt. But the child, his starlit eyes narrowed, the child is something else entirely. She's a witch. Ragnvald's voice cut through the fog. Harold warned us. The Skald's songs were merely a cover. She's been practicing the forbidden arts. The stranger's laugh was like wind through ancient branches. Your pursuers understand so little. They fear what they cannot control, name which what they cannot comprehend. He released the staff, leaving it in Astrid's grasp. But you have already begun to understand, haven't you? Astrid nodded slowly, feeling the staff's power pulse in rhythm with her child's movements. The songs, she whispered. Eric's songs weren't just songs. They touched something older. The skaldcraft was strong in him, yes, ancient magics wrapped in verse and voice, and now that power mingles with your mother's blood, with the vulva's gifts that skip generations. The stranger gestured at her swollen belly. Your child will bridge worlds, if it survives what comes next. The first of her pursuers broke through the fog. Young warriors of her father's household, their faces twisted with zeal and fear. They pulled up short at the sight of the stranger, muttering charms against evil. Choose now, the stranger commanded. Once you cross the boundary, there is no return to what you were. Astrid gripped the wanderer's staff tightly, feeling its power strengthen her tired body. I choose the path of stone, she declared, her voice carrying clearly through the suddenly still air. I choose the forest's law. Then speak your name, your true name, the one your mother whispered over your cradle in the old tongue. The vulva's ring burned like ice against her skin as Astrid spoke the name she had never uttered aloud. The Ida, secret name that carried echoes of ancient power. The staff flared with blue light, and the wall of pines before her groaned like a great door opening. "Kill the witch!" someone shouted. Steel rang as swords cleared sheaths. The stranger smiled, a terrible expression that reminded Astrid that in the old tales those who dwelt in the forest were not always kind. He raised his hand, and the fog condensed into shapes with tooth and claw. "Go," he commanded. "Follow the staff's guidance. It will lead you to those who can help birth a child of two worlds." His smile widened. "I will ensure your passage is uninterrupted." Astrid didn't wait to see what horrors the fog would birth. Clutching the wanderer's staff, she plunged through the gap in the pines. Behind her, screams erupted, whether of rage or terror she couldn't tell. The forest closed around her like a great beast swallowing its prey. Branches wove together, sealing the way behind her. The staff pulled her forward, its runes glowing with pale fire that illuminated a path she would never have seen otherwise. 3 trials lie ahead, the stranger's voice drifted after her, barely audible through the living wall of the forest. 3 tests to prove your worth. Survive them, and both you and your child may claim the forest's protection. Fail, Ika. Staff tugged her onward before she could hear the rest, but she could guess well enough. In the old stories, failure in such trials usually meant a fate worse than death. The babe kicked again, stronger than ever. The staff's runes flickered in response, and Astrid felt power pulse through her tired body. Her child was already attuning to the forest's magic, already adapting to this realm of stranger laws. She thought of Eric, hoping he had heeded her. Warning, hoping he might find his own way to the forest's edge. But that was a hope for another day. Right now, she had trials to face and a child to protect. Gripping the wanderer's staff tightly, Astrid strode deeper into the forbidden forest, where the very shadows seemed alive with watching eyes. The speaking stone hung suspended in a web of roots high above the forest floor, its crystalline surface, catching what little light filtered through the ancient canopy. Astrid leaned heavily on the wanderer's staff, studying the stone's shifting patterns. After 3 days in the troll forest, she had learned to read such signs, or at least to recognize when they held messages meant for her. "Show me," she whispered, in the old tongue, pressing her free hand against the stone's smooth face. The vulva's ring resonated with the crystal, and images bloomed beneath her fingers like frost flowers on winter glass. She saw herself as the forest saw her, a figure haloed in 2 kinds of power, the green flame of her mother's bloodline and the silver fire of Skald song inherited from Eric. Within her belly, the child blazed like a star, its dual heritage, already weaving into something entirely new. But she also saw her pursuers, not on the forest's edge anymore, but pressing inward. Her father's men had turned back, yes, but others had taken their place. Björn Blackfjord himself led them now, and he had brought his own wise woman, a Velva who had turned her gifts to darker purposes. "They cannot cross the boundaries you crossed," a voice rumbled from below, "but there are other ways into our realm, if one is willing to pay the price in blood and pain." Astrid looked down to see one of the forest's true denizens emerge from between massive tree trunks. In the 3 days since entering the forest, she had learned that the name Troll was both accurate and deeply misleading. This one appeared as a giant fashioned from living stone and root, his eyes gleaming with earth-deep wisdom. "Greetings, Stone Singer," she said carefully, using the name he had given her permission to speak. Names held power here, and permission to use them was not granted lightly. The troll settled his massive bulk at the base of the root web, his movements as deliberate as continental drift. "You begin to learn our ways," he observed. "Good. You will need such wisdom for what comes next." The speaking stone pulsed with New images, a circle of standing stones, a moonlit ritual, a child being born while magic crashed like waves against ancient barriers. The first trial approaches, Stonesinger continued, the testing of your mother's blood, your healing gifts, his earth crystal eyes fixed on her belly. The child cannot be born in the lands of men, where old powers have been forgotten, nor can it be born in the deep forest, where those powers run too wild and free. It must happen at the boundary between, and you must prove yourself worthy to attempt such a birth. Astrid felt the truth of his words resonate through the vulva's ring, through the wanderer's staff, through her very bones. She had known somehow that carrying this child would require more than ordinary midwifery. What must I do? Watch, Stonesinger commanded, touching one massive finger to the speaking stone. Learn. The crystal surface blazed with images, healing rites she had never seen, words of power in languages older than human speech, ways of gathering and channeling the forest's wild magic. Astrid absorbed it all, letting the knowledge settle into her body's memory alongside her mother's teachings. 3 waves of power must be caught and turned, the troll explained. 3 barriers between worlds must be maintained. Fail, and the magics within your child will tear you both apart. The bib kicked as if in emphasis, sending ripples of power through the speaking stone. Astrid saw Stonesinger's eyes widen slightly. Strong already, he murmured, like its father. You knew Eric? We know all true skalds. They walk the boundaries as we do, though few of them realize it. The troll's expression might have been a smile, though it was hard to tell on a face. Made of stone. Your Eric learned more than most. His songs caught echoes of the old powers, and in loving you he wove them into your child's making. A distant howl interrupted whatever Astrid might have said in response. Not a wolf's voice. Something larger, angrier. The speaking stone darkened with new images. Björn's vulva performing rites that should have been forbidden, trading portions of her soul for the power to breach the forest's defenses. They draw closer, Stonesinger growled, and we cannot directly interfere until you have passed the trials. Such are the laws that bind us. How long do I have? 3 days until the dark of the moon. 3 days to master healing magics it would normally take years to learn. He rose ponderously to his feet. Come. There are others you must meet, other secrets you must learn if you hope to survive what comes. Astrid spared one last look at the speaking stone before following the troll deeper into the forest. The crystal surface had frozen on a final image, a newborn child with stars in its eyes and frost in its hair, just as she had seen in her earlier vision. But now she saw more detail, saw the way magics of song and healing combined in the infant's aura, saw how its very existence seemed to bridge ancient divisions in the world's power. She rested her hand on her belly, feeling answering movement from within. Be patient, little one, she whispered. We still have much to learn before we can safely bring you into this world. The wanderer's staff hummed in response, its runes aligning briefly with patterns in the vulva's ring. For a moment, Astrid felt the forest's awareness focus on her like sunlight through a lens, testing, measuring, evaluating her fitness for the trials ahead. Stonesinger waited patiently while she gathered herself. When she nodded her readiness, he turned and led her along paths that seemed to form themselves beneath his feet. They were going deeper into the forest's heart, where the real training would begin. Behind them, another howl split the darkness. Closer now. The hunt was on, and time was running out. The map of whispers unfurled across the gnarled table like a living thing, its surface rippling with shadows and light. Unlike ordinary maps scratched on vellum or carved in wood, this one was woven from spider silk and moonlight, its paths shifting and changing as the forest's moods ebbed and flowed. The forest is never the same way twice, explained Saga, the elderly skald who had created the map. Her fingers, twisted with age but still precise, traced patterns in the silvery threads. What matters is learning to read its intentions. Astrid leaned forward, fascinated despite her exhaustion. She had spent the morning learning healing songs from Stonesinger, the magic leaving her throat raw and her mind buzzing. Now, in the Relative safety of the Skald's hidden grove, she studied how the map's patterns corresponded to the forest's ever-changing paths. Here, Saga pointed to a darkening section. The forest thickens its borders, responding to those who would force their way in. And here, her finger moved to a brighter area. The paths open for those it has chosen to protect. The babe stirred restlessly, and the map's patterns swirled in response. Saga's eyes crinkled with interest. Your child already speaks the forest's language? Not surprising given its parentage. Did you know Eric? Astrid asked, unable to keep the hope from her voice. In the 2 days since entering the forest, she had met a dozen outcast Skalds, each of whom spoke of Eric's songs with respect. Know him, girl, I taught him. Saga's laugh was like autumn leaves rustling. He came to us 5 winters ago, barely more than a boy, but with such music in his soul. We showed him the old ways, how to weave power into verse. Though I don't think any of us expected him to weave it quite so thoroughly into love and lineage. The map flickered again, showing a group of armed figures moving through the forest's outer reaches. Björn's hunters, led by his dark vulva. They were closer now, having forced their way through barriers that should have been impenetrable. They burn offerings to the old powers, Saga said grimly. Blood offerings. It speeds their passage, though the price they'll pay later. She shook her head. Still, they may reach us before the dark of the moon. I need more time, Astrid whispered. The healing songs were complex enough, but she was also struggling to master the magical boundaries required for the birth. One mistake during the ceremony could prove fatal for both her and the child. Time is one thing the forest cannot grant, even to its chosen. Saga rolled up the map of whispers, its surface still churning with information. But perhaps we can buy you a little space to breathe. Come. She led Astrid through the Skald's settlement, a collection of cunningly hidden dwellings woven into the living branches of ancient trees. Other exiles nodded in greeting, wise women who had fled the southern priests, Skalds who refused to give up the old magics, even a few warriors who had chosen song over steel. They descended to where a group of younger Skalds sat in a circle, practicing their arts. The air hummed with power as they wove verses into shields and warnings, their songs merging with the forest's natural rhythms. Your Eric learned here, Saga said softly. Learned to touch minds and hearts with his music, to wake the old powers that sleep in all things. But he also learned restraint, when to sing, when to be silent. She shot Astrid a meaningful look, a lesson his hunters would. You do well to heed. The map in Saga's hands pulsed with sudden light. Miles away, they heard an echoing crash, followed by inhuman screams. The younger Skalds faltered in their songs, looking up in alarm. They forced another boundary, Saga explained, studying the map's shifting patterns, but this time the forest took its toll. They'll be more cautious now, which buys us perhaps a few more hours. A contraction seized Astrid, stronger than before. The vulva's ring grew ice-cold, warning of magical energies building up. The child was responding to the forest's power, growing stronger, but also more unstable. We're running out of time in more ways than one, Saga observed. The babe comes whether you're ready or not. Here, she pressed the map of whispers into Astrid's hands. Learn its patterns. When the time comes, you'll need to navigate to the birth circle on instinct alone. Astrid traced the shifting paths with trembling fingers. The map responded to her touch, showing her glimpses of possible futures, herself moving through the forest as if born to it, leading her child along secret ways, teaching songs that bridge the gap between human and troll, between iron and stone. But it also showed darker possibilities, Björn's hunters closing in, the dark vulva's blood magic corrupting ancient wards, a birth ceremony disrupted with catastrophic consequences. Focus, Saga commanded, seeing her expression. The map shows what might be, not what must be. You have your mother's power, your lover's songs, and your own warrior's heart. Use them. The circle of young Skalds had resumed their practice, their voices rising in complex harmonies. Astrid felt the forest respond, felt how the songs reinforced. its natural barriers, while creating new paths for its chosen travelers. The map in her hands danced with possibilities. "Return to Stone Singer," Saga advised. "Complete your healing training. I'll keep watch through the map and send warning if our unwelcome guests draw too close." Astrid reluctantly rolled up the map, already missing its guidance. But Saga was right. She needed every moment of practice she could get. The trial of healing magic would test not just her knowledge, but her endurance, her ability to hold multiple patterns of power while bringing new life into the world. As she made her way back to Stone Singer's Grove, guided by the Wanderer's staff, Astrid found herself humming one of Eric's songs. The forest seemed to lean in to listen, its branches swaying to the ancient rhythm. The babe moved in time with the melody, and for a moment Astrid felt all the disparate magics within her blood fall into perfect harmony. Then another contraction hit, and the moment shattered. Time was running out, and she still had so much to learn. The Skald's drum hung between earth and air, suspended by roots that had grown overnight to cradle it. Its surface, fashioned from ancient oak and stretched with skin from a creature that had never been fully mortal, rippled with patterns that matched Astrid's heartbeat, and more tellingly, her child's. "The drum remembers," Stone Singer intoned, his massive form half-merged with a standing stone. "It carries echoes of every song ever sung in this forest, every rhythm that has moved between worlds." Astrid placed her hand on the drum's surface, feeling the double pulse of two hearts, two kinds of magic. The vulva's ring hummed in harmony, and the Wanderer's staff leaned closer of its own accord, drawn by the drum's power. "Your Eric played this drum," the troll continued. "3 nights he sat here, learning its rhythms until the forest's heart opened to his songs." The dark of the moon was less than a day away now. Astrid's time for learning grew short, but her connection to the forest's magic grew stronger with each passing hour. The child within her had become a conduit, drawing power from the ancient woods and transforming it into something new. "Show me," she said. Stone Singer's granite features shifted in what might have been a smile. He began to tap the drum with fingers the size of branches, drawing forth a rhythm old as glaciers. The sound rippled through the grove, causing leaves to dance and stones to hum. Astrid felt the magic move through her, recognizing patterns that echoed her mother's healing songs and Eric's verse. But there was something more, a deeper current that spoke of roots drinking starlight, of stones dreaming through ages, of boundaries between worlds growing thin. The babe kicked in time with the rhythm, sending sparks of power cascading through Astrid's body. The vulva's ring flared bright as moonlight, and for a moment she saw through the forest's eyes, layers of reality folded together like leaves in a book, each page written in a different kind of magic. "Yes," Stone Singer rumbled approvingly, "you begin to see truly. The child helps you. It exists in multiple worlds already, bridging gaps that have stood since the first songs were sung." He shifted the rhythm subtly, and Astrid felt the change. In her bones, this was the pattern she would need during the birth itself, a way of holding multiple realities stable while new life forced its way between them. She reached for the drum with trembling hands. Stone Singer yielded it to her, watching as she attempted to recreate the complex rhythm. Her first tries were clumsy, but the babe's movements guided her, showing her how the patterns should flow. "Your child teaches you," the troll observed. "As you teach it. This is good. The exchange of power must flow both ways for the birth." Ceremony to succeed. A sudden discord shattered the rhythm. Miles away, they heard the crack of breaking stone, followed by screams that belonged to no human throat. The drum's surface rippled with dark patterns. Björn's vulva had breached another barrier, trading pieces of her soul for the power to force the forest's secrets. "They draw closer," Stone Singer growled, "and they have learned to move faster between the worlds, though the cost." He shook his massive head. No mortal was meant to shed their soul so carelessly. Astrid's hands kept moving on the drum, maintaining the rhythm even as she felt the forest's pain. How many barriers remain between them and us? 2. perhaps 3, if the Skald's songs hold. The troll's eyes gleamed like deep-buried gems, but you cannot wait for the dark of the moon. The birth comes sooner. As if in response to his words, a contraction seized her, stronger than any before. The drum's rhythm faltered as Astrid gasped in pain. Power surged through the vulva's ring, through the wanderer's staff, through the very air around them. "The child responds to their blood magic," Stonesinger said grimly. "It seeks to protect itself, and you, by hastening its arrival." He took the drum from her shaking hands. "Come, there is one more thing you must learn before the trial begins." He led her to a circle of standing stones that Astrid hadn't noticed before, though surely something so massive couldn't have been hidden. The stones were carved with runes that seemed to move of their own accord, telling stories that changed. With each viewing, in the circle's center stood a smaller drum, this one fashioned from white wood and stretched with silver-kissed hide. "The sister drum, Singer explained. "What one hears, the other answers. When the time comes, I will play the great drum from a distance, helping to stabilize the world gate while you bring new life through it." Astrid lifted the sister drum with reverence, feeling how it nested perfectly against her swollen belly. The babe kicked once, hard, and both drums resonated in response. For a moment, all the magic around them fell into perfect harmony, healing songs and skald verse, troll power and human craft, all focused through the lens of new life about to enter the world. Then another contraction seized her, and with it came a vision. Björn's vulva standing before a bleeding stone, trading the last pieces of her humanity for the power to break through the final barriers. Time had run out. "Now, Singer said, his voice like mountains moving. "It must be now. The moon is not yet dark, but neither is the vulva yet here. We must use this moment or lose all." Astrid clutched the sister drum to her chest, feeling the child move within her, feeling the forest's power move around her. All her training, all her preparation had led to this moment. "I'm ready," she said, and was surprised to find it true. Singer nodded once, then pressed his hand against the nearest standing stone. Power rippled outward in a great circle, calling those who would witness and help with the birth ritual. Through the sister drum, Astrid felt answers coming, skalds hurrying through hidden paths, trolls rising from their earth dreams, and other stranger beings drawing near. The trial of healing magic was about to begin, ready or not, and somewhere in the forest, racing against time and blood magic, her hunters approached. The clan banner hung in tatters from a broken branch, Harold's bear rampant, now streaked with something darker than mud. Saga's youngest apprentice had found it at the forest's edge, brought it to the birth circle as a warning. Now it rippled in a wind that touched nothing else, while Astrid knelt in the circle's center, fighting another contraction. "They've broken the second-to-last barrier," Saga announced, studying the map of whispers. "Their vulva," the old Skald's voice caught. "She's burning years of her life now, not just fragments of soul. She'll be dead before the moon rises, but her power may last long enough to reach us." Astrid barely heard her, focused on maintaining the rhythm of the sister drum with one hand, while the other clutched the wanderer's staff. The staff's runes pulsed in time with her heartbeat, helping to channel and direct the waves of magic flowing through her. Singer's deeper drumming echoed from somewhere distant, holding the larger pattern stable. "How many?" she managed between contractions. 20 warriors, led by Björn himself." Saga's fingers traced patterns in the map's shifting surface. "They carry iron weapons, quenched in blood and blessed by their dying vulva. The forest's guardians can't touch them directly anymore." The banner's shadow seemed to lengthen, reaching toward the circle like an accusation. Astrid saw her father's mark picked out in silver thread, the bear that had watched over her childhood, now transformed into a hunter's sigil. The sight sparked something in her memory. "The bear," she gasped. "In the prophecy, when the bear's blood turns against its own, the barriers fall," Saga finished grimly. "Yes, we should have seen it sooner. Your father's actions have fulfilled the ancient warning, breaking bonds that helped hold the forest's power in check." Around them, the circle of standing stones, hummed with increasing power. The skalds had taken positions between them, their songs helping to stabilize the growing magical tensions. Trolls stood further out, their ancient forms blending with stone and shadow as they maintained the outer defenses. Another contraction seized her, stronger than before. The sister drum's rhythm faltered, then steadied, as the babe kicked in perfect time. Through the vulva's ring, Astrid felt the child's dual nature more clearly than ever, human and other, flesh and magic, a bridge between worlds that was about to become a gate. "They've found the old path," Saga reported, her voice tight with concern, "the one that runs through the Valley of Broken Songs. If they take it," she met Astrid's eyes, "they'll reach us just as the birth magic peaks." The banner's shadow twisted again, and this time Astrid saw images in its movement. Björn, leading his men along a trail marked by ancient cairns, the dying Volva stumbling behind them, her blood marking each step with power. The hunters' faces were transformed by magic and hatred into something barely human. "Let them come," Stone Singer's voice rumbled from the shadows. "The prophecy cuts both ways. The bear's blood may break barriers, but it also opens paths that have been closed. For generations, the troll emerged into the circle of stones, the great drum cradled in his rocky arms. Its surface rippled with patterns that matched the sister drum's rhythm, creating a harmony that made the very air shimmer with power. "The child comes," he announced, "and with it, change that none can prevent. The only question is whether that change brings renewal or destruction." Astrid felt the truth of his words in her bones, in the increasingly urgent movements of her child. The old magic was wakening, responding to the combination of circumstances: her mother's healing blood, Eric's skaldcraft, her father's breaking of ancient bonds, and Björn's Völva burning away the barriers between worlds. The banner's shadow reached the edge of the birth circle, and for a moment the bear seemed to come alive, rearing up as if to strike. But it encountered the circle's boundary and shattered into wisps of darkness that reformed into runes of warning. "They've breached the last barrier," Saga whispered, staring at the map of whispers. "All that remains is the forest's heart itself, and with it," she glanced at the darkening sky, "the moon dies in less than an hour." Stonesinger took up position opposite Astrid, the great drum ready. "Then we begin now. Ready or not, the time has come to walk between worlds." The sister drum's rhythm changed under Astrid's hands, guided by some instinct deeper than thought. The child moved within her, its dual nature pulling at the fabric of reality. Through the Völva's ring, she felt the forest's power gathering, condensing around the circle of stones like storm clouds ready to break. "Sing!" Stonesinger commanded the skalds. "Sing the old songs, the deep songs, the songs of Worldgate and wisdom." They began, their voices weaving together in harmonies that made Astrid's vision blur. She saw the world as the forest saw it, layers of reality pressed close, waiting to be parted by new life and old magic. The Wanderer's staff thrummed with power, helping her navigate these multiple levels of being. Another contraction seized her, and this time she felt something new, a sensation of boundaries stretching, of possibilities multiplying. The child was no longer content to simply kick. It was actively working to forge its own path between worlds. "They're running now," Saga reported, her eyes never leaving the map. "Racing the moon's death, racing the birth." She looked up, her face grave. "Björn leads them, wielding a sword marked with his Völva's blood. He means to kill both mother and child at the moment of birth, when the worlds are thinnest." The banner's shadow writhed again, showing her glimpses of the hunter's approach. But Astrid barely noticed, focused on the rhythm of the sister drum, on the increasing pressure of birth and magic combined. The Völva's ring burned cold against her skin, warning of the powers gathering. "Let them come," she heard herself say, though the voice seemed to come from somewhere else, somewhere older, deeper in the forest's heart. "The bear's blood may break barriers, but the child will forge new ones, better ones." Stonesinger's drum took up her rhythm, amplifying it, sending it echoing through the layers of reality. The skald's songs rose in response, and Astrid felt the forest itself lean in, watching, waiting, ready to witness what would come next. The birth trial was beginning, and with it, a race against time, against hunters, against the very fabric of the world itself. The spirit bell rang out across the forest's heart, its crystalline tone cutting through the growing magical storm. Smaller than Astrid's palm, carved from a single piece of star-fallen stone, the bell had not been rung in living memory. Its sound called to powers that usually slept in the deep woods, in the spaces between worlds. The Old Ones wake, Stone Singer announced, his voice barely audible over the combined rhythms of the two drums. They come to witness. Through the haze of contractions and magic, Astrid saw them arriving, beings of root and shadow, of starlight and stone, drawn by the bell's call. They took positions around the outer circle, their forms shifting between human and other, their eyes filled with ancient knowing. The child kicked again, responding to their presence. The sister drum's rhythm changed subtly, incorporating echoes of the bell's tone. Through the vulva's ring, Astrid felt realities beginning to overlap. The world of flesh, the world of spirit, and something else, something new being forged by the child's dual nature. Björn has reached the Valley of Whispers, Saga reported, the map of whispers writhing in her hands. His vulva, the old skald's voice caught. She burns the last of her years. The power she releases tears at the forest's roots. As if, in response, the spirit bell rang again, this time on its own. Its tone carried a warning that needed no translation. The barriers between worlds were growing dangerously thin. Stonesinger's great drum picked up the bell's harmony, weaving it into a deeper rhythm that made the standing stones vibrate. The prophecy speaks of this moment, he rumbled. When the bear's blood breaks the old ways, a new path must be formed. Your child Astrid, it is both the breach and the healing. Another contraction seized her, stronger than ever. The vulva's ring grew ice-cold, then burning hot. Through it, Astrid glimpsed what her child was becoming, a fusion of bloodlines and magics, of human craft and forest power. Not just a bridge between worlds, but the beginning of a new one. The spirit bell chimed a third time, and the air itself seemed to part like a veil. Through the opening, Astrid saw the hunters clearly. Björn leading his men along the ancient path, his sword dripping with the dying vulva's blood. Each drop that fell opened another small tear in reality. The moon dies in minutes, Saga warned, and with it the last natural barrier between worlds. The bell's tone shifted, becoming a warning. The child moved restlessly, responding to the approaching danger. Through the sister drum, through the vulva's ring, through the wanderer's staff, Astrid felt power building to impossible levels. Now, Stonesinger commanded, the birth must begin now, ready or not. The prophecy must be fulfilled, one way or another. The spirit bell rang one final time, its sound merging with Stonesinger's drum, with the skald's songs, with the very pulse of the forest's heart. Astrid felt the child turn within her, positioning itself for birth and for something more. Something that would either heal the torn boundaries between worlds or destroy what little separation remained. Through the magical storm, she heard Björn's voice calling her name, heard the clash of iron weapons against the forest's last defenses. The hunters were almost upon them, but they were no longer simply men. The vulva's blood magic had changed. That made them into something that could walk between worlds. The bell fell silent, but its final tone hung in the air like frost. The Old Ones drew closer, their shifting forms solidifying as they prepared to witness what would come next. Above, the moon's last sliver vanished, plunging the forest into a darkness lit only by magical energies. The time of changing is upon us, Stonesinger intoned. Child of two worlds, forge your path. Blood of the bear, meet blood of the forest. Let what was sundered be joined anew. The birth began in earnest, and with it the final trial. Astrid felt herself becoming a channel for forces beyond comprehension, guided only by the sister drum's rhythm and her child's sure knowledge of what must be done. The spirit bell hung silent in the air before her, waiting to ring once more, either to announce a new world's birth or to mourn the destruction of the old. The war paint shimmered on Astrid's skin like starlight caught in ice, each symbol pulsing. In time, with her contractions, Saga's steady hands completed the final rune across her forehead: protection, transformation, passage, using pigments ground from stones that had never seen sunlight. The old ones used this paint to walk between worlds, the skald murmured, her fingers trembling slightly as she worked, to become neither fully flesh nor fully spirit. Through the sister drum's rhythm, Astrid felt the paint's magic seeping into her blood, preparing her body for what was to come. The child moved within her, its own power resonating with the ancient symbols. Stone Singer's great drum picked up a new pattern, deep and urgent. "They breach the final grove," he rumbled. "Björn leads them through the tears in reality that his Volva's death has opened." The dying screams of the dark Volva echoed through these tears, a sound that belonged to no living throat. Her final sacrifice had torn holes in the world itself, allowing Björn and his hunters to step sideways through reality, avoiding the forest's remaining defenses. Around the birth circle, the gathered skalds took up defensive positions, their songs raising barriers of pure sound. The old ones who had come to witness shifted and changed, their forms becoming more solid as the world grew more fluid. The spirit bell hung silent in the air, waiting. "The paint is complete," Saga announced, stepping back to survey her work. In the magical storm's light, Astrid caught glimpses of her reflection in the polished stone, her skin covered in spiraling, runes that matched the patterns of worlds, splitting and reforming around them. Another contraction seized her, stronger than ever. The war paint flared in response, helping to channel and direct the forces flowing through her body. The child turned again, its dual nature becoming more pronounced as the barriers between worlds grew thinner. Through the Volva's ring, through the patches of torn reality, Astrid saw Björn clearly, his sword dripping with power bought by death, his eyes burning with a zealot's certainty. Behind him, his hunters moved like shadows given flesh, transformed by the dark Volva's final gift. "They mean to kill the child at the moment of birth," Stone Singer warned. "When its power is greatest, when it begins to forge new paths between worlds. They'll try," Astrid growled through clenched teeth. The war paint blazed brighter, responding to her determination. The sister drum's rhythm grew stronger, more insistent. Saga consulted the map of whispers one last time. The prophecy speaks. True, the bear's blood breaks barriers, but it also opens the way for healing. Your child, Astrid, it could mend the torn boundaries, forge new connections between worlds, or destroy what little separation remains. Stone Singer finished. "Much depends on what happens in the next few moments." The old ones drew closer, their ancient eyes fixed on Astrid's painted form. They had come to witness either a restoration or an ending, and they would not interfere either way. Another contraction rippled through her, and with it came a vision. Eric, somehow sensing what was happening, turning his steps toward the forest's heart. But he would arrive too late to help with either birth or battle. The war paint shifted. Again, its patterns adapting to show the flows of power converging on this moment. Through it, Astrid felt herself becoming something more than human, a vessel for transformation, a bridge between worlds. The spirit bell trembled, almost ready to ring. "They come," Stone Singer announced grimly, and in the gathering dark, as reality itself began to crack and fold, Astrid heard Björn's battle cry. The troll's hammer sang through the air, its ancient head carved with runes that blazed with each strike. Stone Singer had pressed it into Astrid's hands moments before the hunters breached the circle, its weight both familiar and strange, a weapon that was also a key, forged to shape both matter and magic. "Remember," he had growled, "it's not just a weapon, it speaks to the bones of the world. Now she wielded it one-handed while maintaining the sister drum's rhythm with the other, each strike sending ripples through multiple realities. Björn's hunters found themselves fighting on shifting ground as the hammer's power awakened the ancient stone beneath their feet. The war paint blazed across her skin, helping her move despite the advanced labor. Through the vulva's ring, she saw the hunters as they truly were, men transformed by blood magic into creatures that could walk between worlds, their weapons trailing shadows like smoke. Björn himself seemed barely human now, his form flickering between flesh and something darker. His sword, stained with his vulva's lifeblood, cut tears in reality with each swing. "The child cannot be allowed to bridge the worlds," he snarled, his voice echoing strangely. "The old barriers must remain." The hammer met his blade with a sound like breaking stars. Power cascaded from the impact, making the standing stones The sister drum's rhythm faltered for a moment as another contraction seized Astrid, but the child's movement steadied her, matching the hammer's song. Around them, battle raged across multiple planes of reality. The scold's songs turned solid, becoming barriers of pure sound that the hunters struggled to breach. The old ones watched from the edges, their ancient eyes gleaming as prophecy fulfilled itself in blood and power. Stone Singer's great drum kept the worlds from tearing completely apart, its deep rhythms holding reality together, even as Björn's blade tried to slash it to pieces. The spirit bell trembled, almost ready to announce the moment of birth, or of ending. "You understand nothing," Astrid gasped between contractions, the hammer moving in patterns that felt older than thought. "The barriers are already failing. The child doesn't break them, it offers a way to heal them." Another hunter lunged through a tear in space, and the hammer sang again. Where it struck, reality itself seemed to ripple and reform. The hammer's ancient magic countering the blood-bought power that drove the hunters. The war paint flared brighter, its runes shifting to match the hammer's song. Through it, through the vulva's ring, through the sister drum's rhythm, Astrid felt the child moving in time with the battle, not fighting against the forces that threatened to tear reality apart, but working to weave them into something new. "The moment comes," Stone Singer's voice boomed across all planes of existence. "The worlds align." The spirit bell began to ring, its crystal tone cutting through the chaos of battle. The child turned one final time, positioning itself for birth and for transformation. Björn raised his bloody sword for a killing blow, but the hammer was already moving, guided by something deeper than skill or strategy. When the weapons met this time, the impact shook the foundations of multiple worlds. And in that moment, as steel met stone, as blood magic met ancient craft, as the child chose its moment to begin its journey into the world, Astrid finally understood what her daughter was trying to create. Not a bridge between worlds, but a new way of being in all of them at once. The hammer sang one last time, its runes blazing like captured stars, as reality itself began to change. The life thread materialized between worlds, a cord of pure light spinning itself from the fabric of reality. Saga's hands moved with ancient knowledge, weaving the thread around Astrid's wrist, binding mother to child across dimensions as the birth began in earnest. "The old ones used this thread to guide souls between worlds," the skald whispered, her voice barely audible above the clash of battle. "Today, it guides new life through paths unmade." The thread pulsed with each contraction, its light matching the rhythms of both drums. Through it, Astrid felt her daughter more clearly than ever, not just moving to be born, but actively weaving new patterns in the torn fabric of reality. Björn's sword slashed through another layer of existence, seeking to sever the thread, but the troll's hammer moved of its own accord, guided by the child's purpose. Where the weapons met, reality crystallized momentarily, showing glimpses of what was being created, paths between worlds that were also worlds themselves, boundaries that connected rather than divided. The war paint blazed across Astrid's skin, helping her move through multiple planes at once. The vulva's ring burned cold then hot, channeling power into the life thread. Stone Singer's drum held the pattern steady, while the sister drum adapted to the child's new rhythm. "She comes!" Saga cried, her hands moving to catch what was being born into more than one world at once. The spirit bell rang out, its tone shifting, to harmonize with a cry that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, the first sound of a child who existed in multiple realities simultaneously. The life thread flared brilliantly, and for a moment, everyone in the circle saw clearly, a newborn girl with stars in her eyes and frost in her hair, her very existence a bridge between what was and what could be. Björn's blade descended one final time, trying to end what he didn't understand. But the child's first cry shattered his blood-bought power like ice in spring floods. The life thread pulsed once more, and reality itself shifted to protect what had just been born. As the thread dissolved, having served its purpose, Astrid held her daughter close. Through the vulva's ring, through the war paint's runes, through the hammer's song, she felt the changes already spreading, healing rippling outward from where the barriers had been torn, new connections forming where there had been only separation. The old ones bowed their heads in witness. The prophecy had been fulfilled, but not as anyone had expected. The bear's blood had broken the old ways, yes, but what came after was not destruction. It was transformation. The bloodstone pulsed in Stone Singer's palm, a crystal the size of a child's fist, its deep red surface now webbed with lines of starlight. The troll held it out to Astrid as she cradled her newborn daughter, the war paint still shimmering across both their skins. "All power has its price," he rumbled. "What was broken must be balanced. What was transformed must be bound by oath." The baby gazed up with eyes that held entire worlds, her tiny fingers reaching for the shifting lights in the stone. Through the vulva's ring, Astrid saw the choices laid before her, paths of power that would reshape not just their lives, but the very nature of reality around them. Björn lay unconscious at the circle's edge, his sword shattered, the blood, magic spent. His hunters had fled through the tears in reality, but those tears were already healing, transformed by the child's birth into something new, doorways instead of wounds, connections instead of breaks. "The forest claims its due," Saga explained softly, the map of whispers showing the changes spreading outward like ripples in a pond. "Your daughter bridges worlds, but someone must guard those bridges. Someone must teach her to walk between." The spirit bell chimed once more, its tone neither warning nor celebration, but acknowledgement. The old ones drew closer, their forms shifting between flesh and shadow, waiting for Astrid's choice. She looked down at her daughter, seeing the frost in her hair, the starlight in her eyes, the way she seemed to exist in multiple places at once. The child would need guidance in both human and forest ways, would need to understand both steel and stone, both song and silence. "What must I give?" Astrid asked, though she already knew. Stone Singer held out the bloodstone, a drop freely given, binding you to the forest's heart. "You will become like us, neither fully flesh nor fully spirit, a guardian of boundaries that are also bridges." The baby laughed, a sound that rippled across multiple realities and reached for the stone again. The choice, Astrid realized, had already been made the moment she had entered the forest seeking sanctuary. She shifted her daughter to one arm and took the bloodstone with her free hand. It was warm to the touch, alive with the power of transformation. Without hesitation, she pressed her thumb against its sharp edge. A single drop of blood fell, and with it, the last remnants of her old life. The stone flared, binding her to her new purpose, to her daughter's destiny, to the forest's endless dance of change and balance. The price was paid. The transformation was complete. The crystal cradle caught the first light of dawn, its faceted surface splitting reality into precious fragments. Within it, Astrid's daughter slept peacefully, existing in multiple worlds at once. Frost patterns formed and melted on the crystal's surface, responding to the child's dreams. Stone Singer had shaped the cradle from the living heart of the forest, creating a space where a child of two worlds could safely rest. The old ones had blessed it, weaving protections that bridged both human and forest magic. Astrid watched her daughter through new eyes. Her own transformation complete, the Völva's ring had melded with her flesh, its power now a permanent part of her. She could see the paths between worlds clearly now, not tiers or barriers, but flowing connections that her daughter's birth had created. Through the crystal's facets, she glimpsed multiple versions of their future, teaching her daughter to walk between worlds, guiding others who sought the forest's wisdom, maintaining the balance between human craft and ancient power. The Skalds would come to learn new songs, and even some of her father's people would eventually seek understanding rather than conquest. Eric would find them soon, drawn by the new paths that now connected all things. He would bring his songs to the forest's heart, adding human music to trollish rhythms, helping to maintain the bridges their daughter had created. The crystal cradle shimmered as the baby stirred, and for a moment all realities aligned in perfect harmony. This was their new dawn, not an ending or a beginning, but a transformation, an opening of ways that had always existed but had never before been seen. The forest had claimed them, and they had claimed it in return. The prophecy was fulfilled, not in blood and breaking, but in birth and binding and beginning again. The memory crystal captured each story as it unfolded, tales of a child who danced between worlds, of a mother who guarded ancient bridges, of a skald whose songs wove reality into new patterns. Its surface shifted like northern lights, each ripple holding fragments of their legacy. Years flowed differently in the forest's heart. Astrid's daughter grew into her power, frost-haired and star-eyed, equally at home with human craft. And trollish magic, Eric's music joined with stone singers' rhythms, creating harmonies that maintained the new bridges between worlds. Others came seeking wisdom, outcasts, seekers, even members of Astrid's old clan, drawn by dreams of transformation. The memory crystal held their stories too, tales of healing, of learning, of boundaries that connected rather than divided. And in the crystal's depths, prophecies continued to form, speaking of further changes yet to come, of new bridges waiting to be built by those who dared to transform themselves. The binding ring gleamed on Astrid's finger as she stood at the forest's edge, watching a group of seekers approach the ancient stones. The ring, forged from her Völva's ring and fragments of Eric's broken sword, pulsed with the combined power of human craft and forest magic. Her daughter, now grown, sang welcome songs that existed in multiple realities at once, while stone, singer's drum kept rhythm with the world's heart. The old barriers had become bridges, the ancient wounds transformed into doorways of understanding. Björn's people had made peace with the forest, learning to walk its paths without breaking them. Even Harold sometimes stood at the boundary, watching his granddaughter dance between worlds, finally understanding that some powers were meant to transform rather than divide. The ring shimmered as Astrid raised her hand in greeting. Another cycle was beginning, another transformation about to unfold. The forest's heart beat on, eternal and ever-changing.